The shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan and the increased risk of terror threats should be a wake-up call to Washington to rebuild trust with partners infuriated by President Biden's handling of the exit, said Senator Bill Hegarty on Sunday after returning from a visit to London and NATO headquarters. He said he heard a deep sense of anger during his meetings with British MPs and ministers, and with representatives of NATO allies, at the way Biden's August 31 deadline put their citizens' lives at risk. The frustration was palpable, he said after flying back at the weekend. You have a moment of reckoning like this. Sometimes it provides the opportunity to engage in a new manner, to bring new energy to a situation. And we've got new challenges that are going to emerge from this. A vacuum has been created in Afghanistan, a vacuum that jihadists and terrorists can flood into. This poses incredibly new and different sorts of threats that we've got to address and address together. And the suicide attack on Kabul Airport, that killed 13 U.S. service members, illustrates how other groups such as ISIS-K are active in the country. Then there is the broader, global challenge from rivals such as Iran, China, Russia and North Korea who will draw lessons from watching an American president withdraw troops after years of stalemate in Afghanistan. All of this emboldens our adversaries around the world that question our resolve, said Hagerty. It's never been more important to work with our strategic allies. Those relationships need rebuilding, he said, after hearing how America's partners viewed Biden's handling of the withdrawal. I think that there is an extreme frustration with what they called a calendar-driven, rather than a conditions-driven, exit from Afghanistan, he said. They felt that was folly, and the result was putting their citizens, their allies at risk. He said he promised to use his position on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to delve into Biden's decision and the handling of the withdrawal. During the trip, he met with NATO ambassadors from Germany, Italy, Turkey, the UK and the US. In London, the Tennessee senator met with MPs from the governing Conservative Party. They are often the first to talk up the historic importance of the special relationship between the UK and the US. But Hagerty's meetings included Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, who last week offered a very public sense of how Biden's approach had undermined the relationship. In an interview with The Spectator magazine, he said the Afghanistan crisis had illustrated Britain's limited power in the world before he turned his anger on Washington. But a superpower that is also not prepared to stick at something isn't probably a superpower either. It is certainly not a global force, it's just a big power, he said. Two former prime ministers have blasted Biden's decision to leave in decidedly undiplomatic terms. Tony Blair said it was imbecilic and John Major told the FT Weekend Festival it was strategically very stupid. European leaders have expressed some of the same reservations, using the precipitous Afghan departure to reheat old ideas about forming a European Union rapid reaction force. The failure in this instance has created yet another opportunity for these sorts of questions about the value of our alliance to come to the fore in these sorts of theories, said Hagerty. He came away from his meetings with a clear sense that politicians on the other side of the Atlantic feel they are on the front line of a decision made thousands of miles away. One thing they made very clear to me as well, is that the failed execution on the Afghan withdrawal has created significant domestic political problems for them, he said. And by that, they feel that the threat of terror is much greater for them because of their proximity than it is for us. The result, he added, was a generation of politicians rethinking how they would deal with Washington. We should be a nation in an alliance that keeps their promises, should be one that operates from a position of strength, and we should never let a calendar dictate our policy, he said. We should base it on practical conditions on the ground, and we should be forward-looking in our policies. European leaders, he added, had woken up to Biden's shortcomings as a president after initially welcoming him to the fold. Joe Biden portrayed himself as level-headed, as someone with 4 decades of experience in government, someone who's well known and trusted by our allies and our foreign leaders, and that he'd be a steady hand in foreign relations, he said. I think the American public and our allies were sold a bill of goods.